say before I get started, I just want to say, before we get started, when Maggie asked me to do this, she said, can you do holiday cooking? And I said, I don't know if I can, because when people think holiday cooking, they think cookies and cakes and pies and all of that. And I just don't eat that way anymore. And she said, well, what about, foods of the season? And I said, well, yeah, I love foods of the season. I mean, all the vegetables and whatever for autumn and winter. And then I said, I can't do this unless I tell people why I eat the way I eat. And that would be presenting the third expert report, which is the largest report on cancer nutrition. And it really is my Bible. So the first half of this is going to be about that third expert report. And then the second half will be some cooking techniques. So with that, I have a PowerPoint and I'm just going to dig in here.
This is the way to go. You need a bowl, you need a strainer, scissors, yogurt.
That's a video for later. Hold on. Sorry. We did a test on the video before we started and there we go. Okay. Okay. So the third expert report is the largest report of its kind to date. It is put out by the World Cancer Research Fund and the American Institute for Cancer Research. It is the largest. It was and is. They've been doing it for 30 years. They update it continuously on the web. It's called the Continuous Update Project. I'm not sure why more people don't know about it. I'm not sure, but it is my Bible. It's pretty much what I live by. And then we're going to actually, we changed this today. We're going to have some Q&As in between, like I said, then some recipes and cooking techniques, and then some more Q&A. I want to start with some disclaimers. That is my name. You'll see that I have no initials after it. I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not a dietitian. I'm not a nurse. I have no initials after my name. That is, however, my email address and my phone number. My phone and my email is always open to a patient or survivor or caretaker or whatever. If you want to call me, please do. This is what I can, however, put after my name. I'm an 18-year late-stage cancer survivor. I carry the BRCA1 gene mutation, which makes me high risk for breast cancer and higher risk for several cancers. I'm a cookbook author. I'm a former restaurant owner, and I am a former chef. I can also put this after my name because it absolutely defines me. Even though this is 18 years in my rearview mirror, because of the BRCA1 thing, because of the devastation I have seen of this disease leaving its path as I talk to people, it is absolutely part of my everyday life. I live my life not to get this thing back again. And knock wood, so far so good. No guarantees, but it's part of my life. Very quickly, I'm not spending too much time on this, but I do want to tell you where I'm coming from. I call this my clueless picture. I was 52 years old, my 52nd birthday, and I didn't have a clue. I was 52 years old. It was 18 years ago. For those of you who really suck at math, I turned 70 this year. I'm not sure. I can't even get those words out of my mouth, but yeah. I turned 70 and I am very, very grateful for every lap around the sun. My initial diagnosis was lymphoma. It was in so many lymph nodes. That's what they thought it was. The ultimate diagnosis was late stage fallopian tube cancer. If you're not familiar with that, you probably are. It is ovarian cancer's evil cousin. My odds were slightly better than ovarian cancer, but seeing that it was all through my lymph nodes, they gave me a 15% chance of survival and a 75% chance of recurrence. So I did the traditional route. I had surgery. I had 8 rounds of chemo. And I knew my odds weren't good. And I thought, well, all right, if it's my time, it's my time. But I'm going to do everything I can to stay here. And I started researching food. And what I found out is that some foods help cause cancer and some foods help prevent it. And that is mostly in labs with rats and mice. But that's pretty much all we had back then. Now we've got some studies with people. But I started putting together a diet around those two food groups. And I really didn't care if oranges helped prostate cancer. I threw it in because nobody was studying fallopian cancer. They're still not studying fallopian tube cancer. Not enough women get it. But anyway, that was 2004, 2007, that second expert report came out, and I could see that I was on the right track. My little diet kind of paralleled what they were saying, so it's kind of been my way of life ever since. I also want to say there's no proof to anything I'm going to tell you today, not because I'm giving you faulty information. There is no proof. There's no 2 and 2 is 4 always going to be 4 proof. There's evidence, a lot of evidence, some of it really strong, some of it not so much, but there is no proof. And people say to me, oh yeah, no, I saw there on TV. No, there's no proof. Don't believe anybody tells you that there's proof. There isn't. The science between nutrition and cancer is not a black and white science. It's shades of gray all over the map. Cancer is now more common than getting married or having a first baby. I think we are in another epidemic, not just COVID. This is an epidemic. 1 out of every 3 women is going to get this in her lifetime. 1 out of every 2 men is going to get this in his lifetime. Children being born today have a 50-50 shot at getting this disease. Experts also now, though, predict that 2/3 of all cancers can be avoided with some lifestyle changes. Don't smoke, stay out of the sun, get your screenings, healthy weight, eat well, exercise. I mean, that's a massive, massive number. And they're also seeing that it spills over into surviving this thing and not getting a reoccurrence. This is a fascinating article, and I gave this to Maggie to pass out. It came out in the Atlantic about 3 years ago. You can't starve cancer, but you might help treat it with food. This is where I think this science is going. Not tomorrow, maybe not even in my lifetime. I don't know, although a lot's changed in 18 years since I've been involved in this. So when we get diabetes or we get kidney disease, doctors tell us to change our diet. There's certain things we can do to help ourselves. And now I think that's also going the way of cancer. Cancer is not one disease, it's 100 different diseases. So it's very specific. When I got diagnosed 18 years ago, I asked my doctor, I said, is there anything I can do? He said, no, nothing. And I don't blame him. There was nothing out there. There's much more evidence now, but I think that absolutely we're going to see this in the future. This is a magazine, and I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's a very good resource. And it's absolutely free. It's called Cure. All you have to do is go register for it on curetoday.com. It's a first-class magazine. Comes to you about 6 times a year, I think, but they also have it online. That particular one that I showed you there was focused on food, but they also do all the latest clinical trials. It's just a really nice resource, and it's absolutely free. curetoday.com. So this is the sex expert report. Okay. It was published in 2007. I actually was in Washington when this thing came out, when the results came out. It was and still is the largest kind of study of its kind today. This is what they did. They took 500,000 of those food studies, again, mostly in labs with rats and mice. They took 500,000 of them. They whittled them down to 7,000 studies. 21 of the top scientists in the world. This was and is a global effort. Took 10 years to pore over this data and tell us which foods they think cause cancer and which foods they think prevented it. They took those findings, they put them into 3 categories: convincing evidence, probable evidence, and limited suggested evidence, which is like possible evidence, right? Third expert report came out in 2018, still the largest study, but now you don't have to wait 10 years. Now they have what they call a continuous update project. And so if they find something pertinent, they put it right up there. And we're going to go in and look at the actual report in a second. So their findings were like an encyclopedia, but they whittled it down to 10 of the top recommendations for cancer prevention. And I'm going to just go over these. I feel a little bit like David Letterman when I do this, the top 10 reasons for top 10 things for cancer prevention. Okay. Be as lean as possible without becoming underweight. I struggle with this, quite frankly. I struggle with weight all my life. I am about 30 or 35 pounds lighter than I was when I got cancer. Be physically active for at least 30 minutes every day. I do this. I walk or I swim every day for 30 minutes. Avoid sugary drinks. Limit consumption of energy-dense foods. Sugary drinks, of course, your sodas, lemonade, whatever. You know, I think most of you guys are on the East Coast. I'm in California. And a few years ago, our legislation in California wanted to put a warning label on sodas that, just like cigarettes, that said dangerous for your health. And of course, the soda industry went crazy and said, no, then the cookies have to do it and the candy. So it went by the wayside, but I think it's that important. Limit consumption of energy-dense food. What's an energy-dense food? It's a lot of food. It's food with a lot of calories and not much else going for it. Your junk food, your chips, your donuts, your cookies, your candy, your junk food. Eat more variety of vegetables, fruits, whole grains, and legumes such as beans. No brainer, right? Heard that all our lives. Beans are a little miracle food, by the way, and a big miracle food in a little package. Beans are incredibly nutritious, whether they're raw or canned, as long as, you know, there's not a lot of preservatives and stuff in the can with it. Literally like 20,000 different kinds of beans. Try something different. There's a little Indian place by me, an Indian store. It's got great Indian beans. Limit consumption of red meat, such as beef, pork, and lamb, and avoid processed meat. Beef, pork, and lamb. Pork is not the other white meat that the advertisers would lead you to believe. It's a red meat. The American Cancer Society says stay away from it. This particular, which is holiday cooking, right? Because everybody wants to put that ham on the table. What's a processed meat? Anything that's been processed. If the meat has been processed at all, if it's been smoked, if it's been cured, if it's got preservatives in it, your lunch meat, your hot dogs, your sausages, your ham. This particular study allowed for 18 ounces of red meat a week, which is with the goal of getting it down to 11. So that was, you know, that's not nothing. But processed meat, they don't suggest an ounce of that a week. If consumed at all, limit alcoholic drinks to 2 for men and 1 for women a day. Limit consumption of salty foods and foods processed with salt. This particular study allowed for 1,500 milligrams a day with 1,500 milligrams, period, I'm sorry, which is a little less than a teaspoon a day, which is fine if you're cooking, not so much if you're eating processed food, if you read the labels. Don't use supplements to protect against cancer. I know that's tough. I took supplements when I was going through cancer, but everything I read says try to get your supplements from the natural source. There's no proof, but let me just say it changes. It changes all the time, so who knows? It's best for mothers to breastfeed. It's got a side thing here. It's best for mothers to breastfeed for up to 6 months. And this is important because 18 years ago, like I say, I got nothing. After treatment, cancer survivors should follow the recommendation for cancer prevention because they're finding it helps prevent a recurrence. This is the third expert report. Okay, they just gave it a little more graphically user-friendly. And it's almost the same thing. There are some changes that I want to go over, but it's almost the same thing. They did add in not smoking and exposure to the sun, saturated and trans fats, processed foods. But here's the big difference between the second and the third. It's not one thing. It's not, I'm going to eat a little broccoli and I'm going to walk around the block. It's everything. It's doing it all. It's making a lifestyle change. And by the way, speaking of processed food, this is a processed food. Plant-based foods have taken America by storm. But this is very definitely a processed food. Look at all those ingredients. Better for the planet, killing less animals, less methane, ozone level, all of that. But this is a processed food. Anyway, that's okay. So the third expert report, the most benefit is to be gained by treating them as an integrated pattern of behaviors that can be considered as a single overarching package or way of life. So, I don't know what you do, but if this seems overwhelming to you and it's too much to do, I would just say start somewhere. If you don't exercise, walk to the neighbors and back, and then the next day, walk 2 doors down and back. If you eat meat, maybe, roll it back 1 day a week, start somewhere. So this was the convincing evidence list in 2007 out of 500,000 studies. 2 things on the convincing evidence list: red meat and processed meat for colon cancer. That was it. This is the convincing evidence list for 2018. A lot more on it. Aflatoxins for the liver. Doesn't really concern us. It's a mold or a fungus that gets on some nuts and seeds, and our FDA or USDA, whatever, they check for food before, it hits our supermarket. So it doesn't concern us. Processed meat is still on there for colon cancer. Red meat fell off. So it does change. Red meat fell off to probable, not convincing. Arsenic in drinking water for the lungs. Again, third world country, doesn't concern us. But look what hit the convincing evidence: alcohol. For a lot of different cancers: mouth, pharynx, larynx, esophagus, liver, colon, and postmenopause breast cancer. High dose beta-carotene supplements for the lung cancer. Being overweight hit this list for a lot of other cancers again. And something we can do absolutely nothing about are adult attained height for several cancers. So I just want to take a second here to actually go in and look at this third expert report, because I think it's really a great resource to have. So you can find it, on the American Institute for Cancer Research or the World Cancer Research Fund. But it's just a wealth of information. But I do like this page because they divvy it up by cancers, and you can go in here by the cancer that interests you and find out what evidence they have. I'm just going to click on breast cancer here. They have a chart for every cancer, what decreases your risk, what increases your risk. And they also have it in a list with a little more explanation for you. It's a wealth of information. It's absolutely a wealth of information on here about cooking and shopping and diet. So I invite you to go on there and maybe just look around a little bit. Exercise. Oh my gosh, this is so important. Here I am walking with my standard poodle named Griff, who's very upset that he's not behind me right now. That's where he spends his days. But they have found that just 30 minutes of walking just around the block every day. So here's a study. The next one slide here. Here's a study that came out a couple of years ago. 3 to 5 hours a week, average pace. So that's 30 minutes a day. Following a breast cancer diagnosis, lowered your risk of a recurrence or death by 40 to 50%. I mean, it's a no-brainer. Doesn't cost anything. You can do it anywhere. Not just that, I have a Google alert that alerts me to anything, with cancer, nutrition, or exercise. I get stuff almost daily that says it reduces your risk of cancer by just lots of cancers by just walking. By the way, that the American Cancer Society says suggests 150 minutes of moderate exercise, 75 minutes of vigorous exercise a week. Vigorous exercise, they define if you are exercising and you can't hold a conversation. They call that vigorous. This is what people say, Pam, what do you do every day? And again, I have no idea. There would have to be two of me to know that if it's working or not. One did this and one did that. I don't know. And I'm not going to take the time to go over this, but it is on the PowerPoint if you're interested. But I am going to take the time to go over what I don't do every day, because this affects my holiday cooking. This affects why I do what I do. Okay. So I don't eat red meat. I haven't had a piece of red meat in 18 years and I don't miss it. And I used to love a hamburger. I used to love prime rib. I used to love barbecued ribs. I couldn't eat it now if it were in front of me. It just sounds greasy and awful. Everything changes. It took a while too. It didn't happen overnight, but your mind changed, your taste changed, everything changes. I haven't had a piece of processed meat in 18 years. And I do, quite frankly, sometimes I miss that because I used to love a Polish sausage or an Italian sausage, but it's just not worth it to me anymore. I remember what it was like when I got that 15% chance of survival diagnosis, and I never want to go back there again. I don't know what the fates have in store for me, but I'm going to do everything I can not to go there. Sugar. That involves my holiday cooking a lot. I don't do a lot of sugar. I don't do processed foods. I don't do refined sugars like white sugar. I don't do simple carbohydrates, white bread, white rice, anything that spikes your blood sugar quickly. I'll go over that in a minute. This is a really wonderful podcast by two oncologists at Sloan Kettering talking about sugar. It's down to earth. It's easy to understand. I know a lot of people think sugar causes cancer because of the whole CAT scan thing, that when we get the dye, it goes to the tumor. They talk about that. There are some cancers that the main culprit of sugar is that it causes obesity. That's the bottom line of this. But this is absolutely 15 minutes worth taking. The thing about sugar, when it enters your bloodstream, it spikes your blood sugar level, and then that's bad for you on many levels. And the faster it spikes your blood sugar level, the worse it is for you. So they devised this thing called the glycemic index and the glycemic score. Basically, anything that is less processed is going to be better for you. For instance, just taking oatmeal, anything that's higher on the glycemic index is worse for you. So just taking oatmeal, your steel cut oats have a 53 on that index. Your instant oats have an 83. Anything that's more processed is going to spike your blood sugar level. The reason that's important to cancer is that they have found that eating a diet high that spikes the glycemic index, your blood sugar level, is linked to a higher risk of endometrial cancer. But endometrial cancer is very also highly linked to weight gain. And being diabetic doubles your risk of several cancers. So I try to stay away from sugar. That being said, almost anything sweet you eat, anything, is going to spike your blood sugar level. Anything, even fruit. And I do some holiday cooking. I do not do dextrose on here is the highest on the glycemic index, 100. That's white sugar. I do some. I cut my sugar, and I tend to use either honey, and honey at least has some nutrients to it, right? Not void of any nutrients. It's a 50 on here. Or I use this turbinado sugar, which is 65 on. But we're kidding ourselves if we think that it's good for us. None of that sweet is good for us. So I limit it. I don't avoid it altogether. I limit it. Fats, omega-6s, I call bad fats. Okay. Fats are really confusing because you've got unsaturated, monounsaturated, polyunsaturated, 3s, 6s, and 9s. I can tell you the only two fats that I eat outside of natural fats like walnuts and avocados, I do canola oil and I do olive oil. They're lowest in saturated and highest in unsaturated. Omega-6s are what they call EFAs, essential fatty acids. Adds are 3s and 9s, omega-3s, which means our body needs them. They're essential, but we don't make them. We have to get them from an outside source. So why is it on my don't list if it's essential? This for me falls into the category of those energy dense foods. It's on my don't list because we should have a ratio of like 3 or 4 of omega-6s to 1 omega-3. I don't measure this. I don't count. I just eat a healthy lifestyle. But we eat so poorly. Now, your omega-6s are your vegetable oils. Corn oil, safflower oil, sunflower oil, palm kernel oil, soybean oil, the most used oil on the planet. Right. So we should have a ratio of 3 or 4 to 1. But we eat so poorly, and it is in everything. Those oils, if you start reading your labels, are in absolutely everything. We eat so poorly in this country that we sometimes have a ratio of 40 or 50 to 1, and that's inflammatory. So if I see anything with those oils, and I'll tell you, I'm in the grocery store and I go, oh, that looks good, and I pull it out, inevitably, it's got those oils in it. They're cheaper, and that's what they use. And they're high in 6s. So let me go back to this. Those are oils. By the way, coconut oil, I know, is like the magic elixir. Everybody thinks it fixes everything from, I don't know, acne to diarrhea. When this came out and everybody was touting it, I asked my dietitian, who I was lucky enough to have one of the 250 oncology dietitians in the country. And I said, what's up with that? And she said, it's a saturated oil, Pam, just stay away from it. So I stay away from coconut oil. Okay, so here's a chart. And it's not the perfect chart, but it gives you an idea of the oils. So omega-6s are blue. Omega-3s are dark green. Remember, 3 to 4 to 1, right? Look at these oils. Sunflower oil. Look at that blue, 64. No, 64 parts omega-6s, no omega-3s at all. Soybean oil. Sesame oil. Oh, hemp oil. I never did how to use it. Corn oil. They're all very, very heavy. And look at the coconut oil. It has a decent ratio of 6s to 3s, but look at the saturated fat in that thing. So, you know, that's my choice. Those are the 2 oils that I use. And by the way, just FYI, olive oil. Well, I'll get to that later when we start baking. Anyway, this is another reason that we have a ratio of 40 or 50 to 1. It's not just processed foods, it's this. I took this at Costco. What I did not take in this picture are the lines of people waiting for this stuff. And I've been hungry at Costco, and I just wait till I get home because there's nothing on here, nothing that I would eat. It's white bread, it's processed meat, it's sugar. And somebody said to me, Pam, what about the salad? There is a salad that you're not seeing way over there. There's more saturated fat in that salad than if you had a hamburger because of the oils, because of and it's in everything. It's in your, packets of salad oil and ketchup and mayonnaise because of the salad dressing, and they take the croutons and they deep fry them in that oil. I took this at a strawberry festival in California, a strawberry festival. The only thing healthy at that festival was when you first walked in the door, you could buy a flat of strawberries. There was like nothing there to eat. It was festival food. It's how we eat in this country. They took a strawberry, they breaded it, they deep fried it. Chili dogs, corn dogs, lemonade. This was a Relay for Life that I went to, an American Cancer Society sponsored event to raise money for cancer. And these are the 2 trucks that they contracted with for the day. It's a 24-hour event. Corn dogs and cookies. And then at 6 o'clock, the trucks changed and they brought in a bacon truck. That's the truth. because that's what people want. I mean, they want people to come to these things. And so they give them what they want. So, you know, we've got some and there was a huge line at the bacon truck. And if you wanted bacon taken off your sandwich, it cost an extra $1. So we've got a long way to go to make these changes, a long way. But I've, you know, one person at a time, I try to change the face of cancer by changing what we put in our supermarket carts. So, okay, holiday cooking. Okay, so these are some healthy substitutes, and you were just asking me about flour. So I do use whole wheat flour or white whole wheat flour for white flour, or I will take some oatmeal. I've got like a coffee grinder and I grind it up. Maybe I'll do half oat flour and half white whole wheat flour. So whole wheat flour isn't, when you're baking for the holidays, isn't always, you know, it's dense. I love a great whole wheat bread, but it's not always good in a cookie, whatever you're doing. So if you're not familiar with white whole wheat flour, it's like somewhere in between whole wheat and white. What they do with white flour is they take out the bran and the germ, and then they grind up and bleach what's left. And that's what you're left with. It's very light. The whole wheat flour still has the bran and the germ in it. So, and that's all the nutrients of the flour. Take out the bran and the germ, and then from these little kernels, they call them. It's a huge industry, just separating those kernels. But the white whole wheat flour is really, you're getting the bran, you're getting the germ. It is literally a different plant. The whole wheat flour is a red kernel. The white whole wheat flour is a white, and they can grind the whole thing up and it's still relatively light. So it's somewhere in between. It's not as light as white flour, but it makes for baking. It's so much better. And you are getting some nutrients in there. I use unsweetened applesauce for butter or oil. I use non-fat Greek yogurt for sour cream. Like I say, I do a non-fat dairy or low fat, but leaning towards non-fat. I do yogurt cheese for cream cheese or sour cream. So yogurt cheese is, and I make a pumpkin cheesecake, which I'm going to give you the recipe for and show you. And I make it with this. You cannot buy yogurt cheese. You have to make yogurt cheese. It is yogurt with the whey taken out of it, which is the liquid, and you are left with like a cream cheese. So I've got a video on how to make yogurt cheese, and I'm going to show it now.
If you're looking for a great substitute for cream cheese or sour cream or mayonnaise, non-fat yogurt cheese is the way to go. You're going to need a bowl, you're going to need a strainer, scissors, yogurt, a saucer. You're going to need some cheesecloth and something heavy like a rock. You're going to cut the cheesecloth double, and we're going to put it in the strainer. Once that's in the strainer, we're going to take our yogurt and we're going to pour our yogurt into the strainer. This is about half a quart. Now we're going to cover it up. We're just going to take the cheesecloth and we're going to cover it up. And to kind of hurry the process along a little bit, we're going to take just a saucer and we're going to put it on top of the cheesecloth. And then I'm going to put something heavy. This is just a rock I've gotten out of my garden that I've covered with foil. And I'm going to put it on top of the saucer. And now you leave it sit. I'm going to put it in the refrigerator for, well, if you leave it in for a day, you get about cream cheese. If you leave it in for an hour, you get about the consistency of sour cream. Okay, so 24 hours later, you can take it out of your refrigerator and you can see that all the liquid or the whey has drained out of it. And if you unwrap this, you see that you are left with something very similar to cream cheese. You can use it as cream cheese on your morning bagel, or you can use it, as I do, as a topping for my carrot cake or mayonnaise. I'm going to put it in my coleslaw.
It's a great substitute for mayonnaise, because if you just put yogurt in your coleslaw, it separates the next day. It's just all water and everything, but this doesn't separate. And it makes, you'll see in a second, it makes an absolutely great pumpkin cheesecake or cheesecake substitute. Anyway, I use avocado for mayonnaise, butter, or oil, or bananas, depending on what you're making, what you want that flavor in there. I don't do red meat, like I say, so I'll do ground turkey or chicken for red meat. Olive oil or canola oil when they ask for vegetable oils. By the way, extra virgin olive oil is your first pressing of the oil. Virgin olive oil is your second. Olive oil is your third pressing. Light olive oil is your fourth pressing of the olive, so it hardly has any taste to it. So I use that in baking. Dark leafy greens instead of iceberg or romaine lettuce. There is no, iceberg lettuce is like 90% water. There's no nutrients in it. I would suggest if you're having a salad, kale, arugula, cabbage, spinach, any of your dark leafy greens instead of iceberg lettuce. Skim milk, I don't do full fat or cream. That's a tough one for the holidays, but you know what? It works out fine. And egg whites, I do 2 egg whites for 1 whole egg, because sometimes I just don't want all that saturated fat. So this is, I'll show you how I substitute. So this is a recipe which you are not familiar with because you guys are on the East Coast, but this is the LAUSD coffee cake recipe, which is the Los Angeles Unified Student School coffee district coffee cake recipe. And I went back to school in my 40s. And this recipe is served from grammar school in their cafeterias to college. And it comes on a big old tray, and you had to be there when it came out. People lined up for this stuff and it was gone like that. It was so good. Recipe, big secret. Nobody ever told you the recipe. Somebody published it in the LA Times. So then we had it. So now I make this occasionally. Not that often, but I make it occasionally. Okay, so instead of baker's flour, like I said, I use the white whole wheat flour. Instead of brown sugar and granulated sugar, I use that turbinado sugar. But I always cut that sugar in half. It's sweeter than it needs to be. This is 1.5 cups of sugar. I'm using 3/4 cup of that turbinado sugar. Salt, nutmeg, same thing. I always cut my oil. This recipe calls for 3/4 cup of salad oil. I use 1/3 cup of canola oil. Your spices, the same thing, baking soda, baking powder, 1 large egg. I put in 2 egg whites, 1 cup of buttermilk. I find that if I use skim milk and you put a teaspoon of vinegar or a teaspoon of lemon juice in, it kind of curdles it and you get that sour taste and it works fine. This is my coffee cake down here. Is it as good as the LAUSD? No, it's not quite as good, but you know what? It's pretty good. It's good enough. This is pumpkin season. I love pumpkin season. Right now on my dining room table are 3 pumpkins waiting to be cooked. I've already cooked 2 of them. So this is a carving pumpkin. If you've never done this, I invite you to try. It's fun and it makes all the difference in something you are making that's pumpkin. So this is a carving pumpkin. You see how light, great. I mean, they did a great job carving. How light that flesh is. Okay, so these are the 3 I have on my dining room table right now. Not carving pumpkins. I don't even know what they're called. This is a white pumpkin. I'm not sure what the other ones are called. There's a lot of different kinds. Look at the flesh on that. I cook them, I cut them up and I cook them. I know some people just cut them in half and roast them. That's a little, I don't know, it's just unwieldy for me. I cut them up, I put them in a roasting pan, a little bit of water on the bottom, bake them off for about an hour. When it cools off, I scoop all that great flesh out and then I use it for my baking. It makes all the difference. And look at the color on that thing. And it freezes too. I've got 3 pumpkins. I will eat pumpkins probably into spring. It freezes. It separates in the freezer, but it's fine for baking and cooking with. It still is. Here's my pumpkin bread with oatmeal topping going in. I gave you the recipe for that. Going into the oven, coming out of the oven. I gave this to a friend of mine recently. I brought a piece to her and she said, "Oh my God, Pam, that's the best pumpkin bread I've ever had in my life. You should sell that recipe to Starbucks. It's so much better than what they serve." But you know what? It's not my recipe. It's this. I'm telling you, if you try this, you'll never go back to canned. But that being said, I've given you recipes. If you use canned, it's fine. Here's another thing I love on holiday baking. I love making bread. I think it's a lost art. Of course, any of your vegetable bread, your zucchini bread, your pumpkin bread, you know, you just mix it up, banana bread, and you put it in. Soda bread, same thing, just mix it up, form it, put it in the oven. I did give you the recipe for my soda bread. There's nothing better than the smell of bread coming out of the oven on a winter's day. Nothing. So I like to make bread, and I think it's a lost art. It's not hard. It's about 10 minutes of work. It may take a couple hours the process, but you know what you're getting. You're not getting any preservatives. And my grandmother taught me how to make this, and I don't know, I just like making it. I know in the 80s they came out with those bread machines. I like getting my hands in it. So I did not have a video on making bread, but I do have a video on making pizza dough because I make my own pizzas. And this is the video on that. The process is absolutely the same for making fresh bread as making this dough. So I'm going to show you this video.
I've got whole wheat flour, yeast, salt, olive oil, water, non-fat milk, cornmeal for dusting. Making pizza dough, or any dough for that matter, is not as difficult as most people think. It's about 10 minutes of work. So white whole wheat flour, because it's very similar in texture to white flour. I'm going to put in 2 teaspoons of yeast, and this is an instant yeast. That means I don't have to get it started in water first. I've got a teaspoon of salt. I've got 2 teaspoons of a natural brown sugar. Once my dry ingredients are in there, I'm going to add my wet ingredients. I'm going to add my milk, 3/4 of a cup. I'm going to add my water, another 3/4 of a cup. And then I'm going to add my olive oil, about a tablespoon. I'm going to mix this until it becomes a little sticky dough. And then we're going to turn it out on the counter. Since I use my countertop to knead out my dough, I'm going to spray it with a cooking spray. And now I'm going to turn my dough right out on my countertop. And now we're going to start kneading it into a ball. Just start bringing it together with your hands and mixing it. The best way to knead it is to just use your palms and just push away from you and then pull back, push away from you and then pull back. You're going to knead it until it becomes a nice smooth dough, and then you're going to form it into a ball. And once it's formed into the ball, we're going to take a bowl that I've sprayed with some canola oil spray, and we're going to place the dough in the bowl and then cover it. I cover it with a piece of saran wrap and then just set it aside for about an hour in a warm place till it doubles. After an hour and it's doubled in size, it looks like this. After the dough has risen to double, you're going to cut it into 4 equal pieces and make 4 small balls. And that will make 4 absolutely delicious whole wheat pizzas.
So if you were going to make bread instead of pizza dough, instead of making those 4 balls, you would just form it into your loaf and let it rise one more time and put it in the oven. I mean, it's really like 10 minutes of work and you've got nice fresh bread. So desserts, here's the stickler, because, you know, everybody wants desserts for the holidays and, you know, we want to still stay healthy. This is my pumpkin cheesecake made with that yogurt cheese. I don't think you would know the difference. And years ago, before COVID, I had people to my house. I always had a lot of people for Thanksgiving and Christmas dinner. And people would say, well, what should I bring? I said, well, whatever you want to bring dessert, whatever. And inevitably they'd bring some Marie calendars or something. And you know something, my desserts would go first because I think people want to eat healthily. They don't want, people want to eat well. Sometimes the thing about my cheesecake is the only thing that I was remotely bad in here are graham crackers. And again, it's a once a year thing for me. And I use low fat graham crackers, but still there's stuff in there. Sometimes I will make this simply without the crust at all. And it's kind of like a mousse. It's kind of like a pumpkin mousse. This is a funky little dessert and it really gets the taste of the season in without anything bad in it at all. This is a cross between a pudding and a pie, and I bake it as a pie. There is no crust on it at all. I gave you the recipe for this, and you get a little crust that actually forms around the edges. The only thing that is remotely bad in this entire pie is 3 tablespoons of that turbinado sugar in the whole pie. I also make a berry pie at Christmas time, Thanksgiving time. I use, again, only once a year I do this. I don't eat like graham crackers as a rule, but I use the low-fat graham crackers. I tried to make a crust, a healthy crust. I can't make it without butter. You need butter or lard to make a pie crust. Believe me, I have tried. You need it to be flaky. And we eat anything at my house, but I would never serve it to company. So I do my pie and I do it in this graham cracker crust. The fruit filling is literally just fruit. And there's no sugar. You don't need sugar. It's just berries. And I usually serve it with a dollop of whipped cream. There's the recipe for my pie ingredients. Again, I will put sugar in if by any chance I taste it ahead of time and it's, you know, sometimes the fruit's a little bitter. This is something I do all the time. I gave you the recipe for roasted vegetables, roasted root vegetables. I mean, that's great in the winter. But I do this every week. I still work at 70. I spend 2 hours in a kitchen on a Sunday. And I just prep for my week because when I get home, I want something decent there. I don't want to be looking for food. I want to know that good food is sitting there and waiting for me. I take any vegetable and I have no waste either. Any vegetable that's a little tired in my refrigerator and I chop it up. A little oil on there, a little salt, a little pepper, a little garlic. Mix it up. Put some foil on it. Bake it off. Pending an hour at 400 degrees, depending on if you like your vegetables al dente or not. I always have cooked vegetables in my refrigerator for a stir fry, for a pizza, for a salad, for a side. I do the same thing with fruit. This is an all year round thing for me. I chop up fruit, apples, pears, nectarines, plums, berries, mix it up with a little pumpkin pie spice. Same thing. Cover it, bake it off for about an hour, and this is what I will have for dessert. It's like a pie, it's warm, it's gooey, without the butter and the crust. Beets, I always have beets in my refrigerator. I know a lot of people don't like to cook them, they're messy, right? This is the easiest way to cook them. Put them in foil. One big beet, wrap it in foil like you would a baked potato, or a bunch of little beets, wrap it in a packet. I gave you the recipe for this. You bake it, you let it cool. When it's cool, you run that under cold water and all the skin and everything falls off. I always have a bowl of beets. This is something else I do on a Sunday. Beets are very, very healthy for you, including the greens. By the way, don't throw those greens out. They can be eaten and cooked. This is my beet salad I gave you the recipe for. Love that on arugula. And it's the season for soups and stews. I eat a lot of bowls. I'm not necessarily a plate person, although I do it with protein and carbs and vegetables. I eat a lot of bowls, especially this season. And when I cook it, I cook a huge pot of it because it's a lot of chopping. There's no way, it's going to be more work than standing in line at McDonald's. There's no doubt about it. And if I'm chopping, I'm doing it once and then I'm freezing it. A couple months later, I go back, it looks brand new to me. I gave you the recipe for my veggie chili, and I also gave you the recipe for this. This is ridiculously easy soup. I've served this to company. They love it. There's not a drop of cream in it. There are only vegetables in this thing, and it's delicious. It's healthy squash soup, and I have a video on this.
1 large onion, 2 large carrots, 4 large stalks of celery, 1 medium butternut squash, 5 to 6 cups of vegetable stock, and 1 small bunch of parsley. Squash carrot soup is so easy to make because you don't have to dice all your vegetables. You just give them a rough cut and you toss them in the pot. I've got 1 large onion chopped, 1 butternut squash cut up roughly, small bunch of parsley. No need to cut this up at all, just toss it in the pot. And about 4 cloves of garlic, whole garlic. Now we're going to add our vegetable stock. We're going to add just enough stock to barely cover the vegetables. Not quite. This could be 5 to 6 cups, depending on how big your vegetables are. Just barely cover it. Bring it to a boil. And once it gets to a boil, we're going to turn it down to a simmer, cover it, and leave it cook for about an hour, just until your vegetables are tender. After an hour, once your vegetables are tender, I'm going to season this with salt, pepper, and a little nutmeg. I'm going to season it right in the pot, but you can do it afterwards after it's blended too. So now we're going to blend this so it becomes a nice, creamy, rich soup. You don't want too much liquid in there, just enough liquid so it's able to blend. And there's your soup, ready to serve. A topping made of sunflower seeds, almonds, chives, and apple. This is a great soup, how thick and rich that is. Not a drop of cream in it, healthy squash soup.
The topping makes that soup. I'm sorry, the video and the audio was a little off. The topping makes that soup. It, as Emerald would say, it kicks it up a notch. So this was my Thanksgiving dinner last year. Again, I used to have a house full of people. I said to people, you can pick it up. I've got takeout this year. People weren't going out with COVID, or I delivered it to people who couldn't get out. Here's what I do on Thanksgiving. I do cook a turkey, but I do 7 or 8 vegetables. My plate is mostly vegetables. Here's a stickler though. The darn gravy is a stickler, because what we do is you cook the turkey and then you use the drippings, and there's all that fat in the drippings. And years ago, when stuff was cheap, they would say, buy one turkey, get one free or whatever. I would literally make 2 turkeys. I would make one a few days before and save the drippings, because when you put it in the refrigerator, the fat goes to the top. But now things aren't cheap anymore. So this little thing, if you want a fat-free gravy, this little thing, it's called a gravy separator, and you can get it on Amazon for a few bucks, and you can use your hot drippings, and even when they're hot, the fat will go to the top, and you see the spouts on the bottom. So the last thing you're going to pour is the fat, and you just dump that, and then you've just got your drippings. You don't have any of that fat. I don't know. I do a lot of little things to help myself. Whether it helps or not, again, I don't know. But any little thing I can do, I do. Stuffing mix. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. This is junk. This is just junk. Look at all the preservatives and stuff in there. And you're doing all the work anyway. You're cutting the celery. You're cutting the onions. You're mixing it up. This is what I do. This is what my mother did. I think when in the 50s, I don't even think this existed. My mother just saved stale bread for a week, left it on the counter with a dishcloth over it, and then seasoned it with these spices here. Just season it with the spices. And you can follow the same recipe that's on the box, although I wouldn't do butter. Again, I do my substitute of oil or chicken stock, but you don't need all those preservatives. The other thing that's hard, and I use this stuff for years, the second ingredient on here is high fructose corn syrup and then corn syrup. I make my own cranberry sauce, not that hard. I've given you the recipe for that. I start with orange juice, and then I try to sweeten it again. Anything that spikes your sugar level is not great, but I try to sweeten it with apples and pears, a ripe apple. I cook that down with it. And then I add as little sugar as possible before it becomes, cranberry sauce. So this is the last video I have for you, because also with the holidays, you have company coming. And this is a really wonderful breakfast. The kids love it. The kids love to get involved in cooking it. If you have company and it's easy, and again, they'll think you're a rock star in the kitchen.
Okay, so now we're going to make stuffed French toast. fresh strawberries and blueberries, half a banana sliced long ways, a little bit of almond butter, nice toasted walnuts, 2 slices of a healthy grain bread, an orange zested and a lemon zested, and a milk mixture made with an egg and some nice almond extract. So now we're going to make stuffed French toast. This dish is ridiculously easy. So what we're going to do is we're going to take 2 pieces of whole wheat bread, and we're going to take some almond butter, and we're going to spread it on each side of the bread. We're really going to make a fruit sandwich. Now I'm going to put my sliced bananas on my sandwich. Now I'm going to put my sliced strawberries on there, pretty much cover the sandwich with them. Now I'm going to put my blueberries on there. Just fit them in as best you can. So now I'm going to close up my sandwich. And you're going to press down on it and put it all together. And I'm going to cut it in quarters. Now I've got an egg mixture here that I've got milk, an egg, some cinnamon, and some almond extract. And I'm going to dip my sandwich in there. And then I'm going to put it on a preheated hand-sprayed grill. It only take a couple of minutes on each side. Okay, now we're going to plate it. Take it right off the grill onto your plate. The fruit's all gooey. To finish this dish, I like to top it with some orange zest and some lemon zest. I like to top it with some nice toasted walnuts, dusting of powdered sugar. Yeah, and then I like to serve it with a nice fresh fruit compote or some real maple syrup in moderation. Okay, so now we're going to make.
And that's it. I do think that you can eat well and still eat healthy.